Honourable Member for Scarborough Southwest.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And the last portion of the debate from my honourable colleague, where he was talking about if it's working, fix it again. I actually have a different take on that. I remember the government of Mike Harris, where we had an education minister, John Snowbelin, who actually had the gall to say, in regards to education, that we have to create a crisis so that we can come in and fix it. We have to break what's working so that we can go in and fix it. And, Mr. Speaker, when I look at the front bench across the way, it reminds me of the Minister of Finance, the Treasury Board Secretary, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs. They were all principal players in that government, bringing that kind of approach to the federal level. Now, Mr. Speaker, I'm rising today to oppose Bill C-2. What the Conservatives are trying to do with the bill is clear, and I have to give them credit for the level of political camouflaging contained within this bill. It's clear that the measures in the bill would hurt some of the most vulnerable in our society and would be very costly to our healthcare system. Another very troubling and repeating pattern with this government. Why do we even have a Supreme Court ruling in this case, Mr. Speaker? It's because the government was challenging the right of existence of Insight and safe injection sites. They don't believe in them. They don't want them. They want to make it as onerous as possible, which is the purpose of this legislation. And then you've got the member for Etobicoke Lakeshore getting up and saying, are you against community consultation? I mean, that's ridiculous, trying to camouflage the deep flaws in this bill with statements like that. Of course we're in favor of consulting Canadians and communities about what goes on in their neighbourhoods. That's exactly how governments should work. But this government, time and time again, ignores that basic principle when we're talking about resource development, when we're talking about environmental protections, and when we're talking about the safety of Canadians. You know, it's like saying, well, are you against oxygen? Well, nobody's against oxygen, Mr. Speaker. We wouldn't be here without it. Now, this bill pretends to address public health and safety concerns about safe injection sites. In fact, it has three other completely different goals. Very simply, the bill aims to shut down Insight, the supervised injection site in East Vancouver, and to prevent any other supervised sites from operating. I believe it aims to nullify and circumvent the 2011 Supreme Court of Canada ruling in favor of safe injection sites, and I believe that it constitutes a further attack on the principle of harm reduction, Mr. Speaker. Now, harm reduction is critical to dealing with issues of substance abuse. You know, we have to reduce the harm so that people can be in a position where they can gain quality of life, where they can have the strength to overcome the tremendous challenges that come with addiction. And, Mr. Speaker, in Toronto, we have one of the country's foremost centres for dealing with addiction and mental health. It's called CAMH, the Centre for Addiction and Mental Health, and now I'd like to read out from their submission to the Toronto Board of Health in July of this year in regards to supervised injection sites. And they said, supervised injection services are another public health approach that can reduce harms associated with injection drug use. Research from around the globe has shown that these services are associated with several benefits to injection drug users, including reducing behaviors associated with HIV and hepatitis C infections, lowering risky injection practices, reducing overdoses, and increasing referrals to treatment and other health services. And I'll stop right there just for a moment and repeat that last part. And increasing referrals to treatment and other health services. Mr. Speaker, I'll bring up a business analogy here, and of course the folks across the way, they love those. You know, anybody who's run a business knows how much harder it is to get a new client in the door than it is to keep an existing one. Part of the purpose of safe injection sites is to get people in the door so that you can give them access to the other services that are going to make them healthy and productive members of our society at lower cost. You know, that's what's really funny about this bill. It's going to cost Canadians millions of dollars in future court challenges, in future health care costs, in destruction of communities because these services won't exist. Now, continuing with the Centre for Addiction and Mental Health submission to the Toronto Board of Health in July of 2013. In addition, supervised injection services do not increase crime and disorder in the surrounding neighborhood and actually reduce other problems like public drug use and discarded injection equipment. That's pretty clear. That's pretty simple. That's very basic. It does not increase crime or disorder in the surrounding neighborhoods and actually reduces problems like public drug use and discarded injection equipment. It helps to actually keep our communities safer, the communities that have these kind of problems. And with respect to discarded injection equipment, Mr. Speaker, when I was a child, when I was 9 or 10, my father, who was a teacher in Scarborough, was teaching at Samuel Hearn Public School at the time. And they used to, every year, around the Environment Day, they would engage in community public cleanups. They would go out into the neighborhood and do a great, fabulous public service and help keep their neighborhoods clean. And they were in an alleyway about a block away from the school behind Danforth Avenue near Pharmacy. And they were cleaning up trash in the back alleyways and picking up a pile of trash. And my father was wearing work gloves, but they weren't the kind of thickness that would be required to stop a needle from piercing. And he picked up that pile of garbage and was pricked by a syringe from a discarded drug user. Now, Mr. Speaker, as a 9 or 10-year-old, it's very hard to fathom and understand what follows from that. But what followed, Mr. Speaker, was that he had to go and be tested for HIV, for hepatitis, and for other infectious diseases. And that created months of concern and anguish within our family, not knowing whether he had picked up a transmissible disease or a communicable disease, whether he was going to face some horrific health challenges in the future. Now, we are very fortunate that in the end all the results were negative. But, Mr. Speaker, the cost to the healthcare system of going with that, the cost to our family and having to deal with that, and all the uncertainty that follows is a direct result of the fact that there were discarded needles on the ground. And will safe injection sites eliminate this problem completely? Of course not. There's no silver bullet. But they will be a big part of reducing the harm that happens in our communities. And Mr. Speaker, I also remember not so long ago when a Starbucks in Toronto at John and Queen installed a safe disposal box for needles in their bathroom. And there was uproar from conservatives. There was absolute uproar. Oh, you're encouraging drug use. People are now going to go to that Starbucks to shoot up. Well, no, Mr. Speaker. What was happening was people were already going to Starbucks and shooting up and throwing needles in the garbage can. And then the staff at the end of the day would have to come in and pick up that garbage and put their lives at risk because of stupid, inconsiderate policies brought forward by people on the other side, Mr. Speaker. And this trend continues to this day. Never let argument get in front of ideology. Absolutely not, Mr. Speaker. Now, continuing from the Centre for Addiction and Mental Health submission, given the difference in geography and culture of drug use among cities, experiences from these supervised injection sites are not simply transferable to other cities such as Toronto. However, there is evidence to suggest that a supervised injection service could be beneficial to Toronto, though further research involving the development of a pilot supervised injection service would be needed to confirm. With that in mind, CAMH supports the development of a pilot supervised injection service in Toronto as a teaching hospital dedicated to care, research, and education in mental health and addiction. CAMH would be happy to work with other partners to play a role in the evaluation of the pilot service and offer treatment to those in need. Treatment, Mr. Speaker. That's what's important and critical here, is the treatment that people will receive going to these safe injection sites. The kind of treatment that will help to get them off the street, that will help to reduce the harm to them and their families and to the communities, that will reduce the amount of drug addiction that exists in our community, and that will help more people have better quality of life and fulfillment and be active and participating members of our community. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Member for Caribou Prince George. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I listened to the member from Scarborough Southwest, and he talked about a couple of things. Number one, how it would be so helpful to the drug addicts on the streets once they got them inside the door to give them treatment and advice on how to live better and healthier lives. And now, just near the end of his speech, talking about how we have to have another new plan, a pilot project, and work on getting people off the streets and off drugs. I mean, those are all good things, of course, getting people off drugs and healthier lives. But before, we already have injection sites. And if the member is going to make claims of how helpful they are, I would love to see some statistics that back it up, that show clearly the results of any help that was given, how many people were treated, how many people actually got off drugs, how many people repeated and have never gotten off drugs. I mean, it's great to talk a good story, but you've got to have facts to back it up. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Scarborough Southwest.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the facts have been relayed time and 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 time again today by the other members, stating the facts about the Insight Service in Vancouver and why it is so helpful to the community, and the fact that 80% of the community supports the site, that overdose deaths are down 35%. Perhaps if the member paid attention to more than one speech, he would have heard all those wonderful facts being relayed.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Member for York West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I'd like to ask a few questions of our Honourable Member. I want to congratulate him first on his comments and on his understanding of how serious this issue is. I've been in politics 25 years now, and one of the first things I did in elected office some 25 years ago this month was to initiate a Dollars Against Drug Abuse Fund, and raised all kinds of money to help in our war on drugs and our fight, and here we are still here and have made very little progress. Harm reduction, when it was first mentioned to me some 20 years ago, I said, oh no, this idea would be terrible. I sounded just like the folks over there on the other side of the house. I didn't understand it, but it's no, that's not where we want to go. We don't want to do harm reduction, we want to do elimination altogether. Well, you know what, here we are, 20 years after that. I visited that site. I am very supportive of it. I visited with much trepidation, much as our members there. And I think if the members of the government actually went out and visited this site and spent a few hours there, they would realize it's really about harm reduction. It's not for everybody just to go there. It's about helping people who need help. I'd like to hear some comments from the Honourable Member on that issue.
The Honourable Member for Scarborough Southwest.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank the member for her comments. And certainly, I mean, it actually takes courage in this House to get up and say that at one point I was wrong. And I want to congratulate the member for maintaining an open mind and for being open to the possibility that other and new ideas could be useful despite an initial trepidation for it. And I just wish that once in this House, I've been here as a member for over 2 years, and not once in this House, Mr. Speaker, have I seen the government the other way show an open mind or talk to the possibility that another idea could be good. And we see it time and time again. And that's why I'm very concerned that when this does go back to committee, the Conservative members of the committee are going to slam and stop absolutely every single good and reasoned amendment that the opposition is going to bring forward. So thanks again for the comments. I mean, we're all wrong from time to time. And it's wonderful to be able to show that we've had a change of opinion and that we're on board with something that really is helpful to communities and to individuals.